Good news for the Eagles on the offensive line. As for the wide receiver position, A.J. Brown joined Gronk and Julian Edelman on the Dudes on Dudes podcast and had this to say.
Just remember, we're all Patriots. You know that, right?
Are you going to be a Patriot?
I'm trolling. I used to write in my notebook because at the time I didn't really like Bray. I didn't like him. I admit that, he knows that. And so I used to write, I hate Bray, I hate Bray, I hate Bray, right? But I was doing that to pretend like I was right. I was taking notes to look like I was engaged, but because he was so hard on me when I was a rookie and I didn't really understand it. And so it was at the time I told Bray, I was like, hey, like I'm humble already. You don't gotta humble me. But I really didn't understand what he was trying to, push me to be.
So that's interesting, of course, Mina and Tim, because Mike Vrabel, I don't know if you guys knew this, is now the head coach of the Patriots, and they might be looking for a wide receiver this offseason. Mina, what do you think of what AJ had to say there?
I'm still recovering from Dudes on Dudes podcast.
Yeah. Me too.
There's been so much smoke around A.J. Brown now for so long, it's kind of hard to ignore it, right? Like, my feeling, we're going to talk about, like, if I'm the Eagles, you don't want to trade him unless he forces the issue, and he might actually force the issue, right? So if that happens and they don't have a choice, you can certainly get a ton of value for him at this moment.
Tim, Patriots make sense if that happens?
I think so. I mean, the history with the player, has been difficult to manage for some people, throughout his career, probably not for Mike Vrabel. And look, it's a need for New England. I mean, the fact of the matter is they need to get a lot better at wide receiver, especially somebody that can play outside. So, yeah, I mean, look, we're connecting a lot of dots. There's probably a lot of things that need to happen to make that happen, but it would make sense, I think, for player and team.
Could depend on whether Vrabel finds those old notebooks that A.J. Brown was scribbling in. Anyway, this all leads us to a new article out on ESPN.com where Jeremy Fowler, Tim McManus, Ben Solak, Seth Walder, and myself gave some thought to potential trade partners for A.J. Brown. What we did was we proposed trades from various teams, and Tim, who's our Eagles reporter, rejected them all. This is the offer I put out there. Bills get A.J. Brown. Eagles get 2026 first-round pick. That's number 26 overall. Made sense to me. Bills seem like the most win-now team of all time. They literally just fired their head coach after getting to the second round of the playoffs. So that's probably a more helpful win-now piece, Mina, than anybody they could probably get at 26 in the draft. What did you think of that idea?
Well, I love it for Buffalo. I would absolutely do it. He's exactly what they need. He's exactly what every team needs, but traditional X-receiver, separates downfield, all three levels, threat, touchdown machine for them. I think if he were to join them, I think my bigger question would be for Philadelphia. Is that worth it? You'd have to work something out contractually, because if you were to do the trade for June, it would be quite a big cap hit, and this is a Philadelphia Eagles team that should also be trying to win now. I personally would probably want a little more, which might sound crazy if you're talking about a first-round pick, but ultimately I think it comes down to how hard A.J. Brown himself is willing to push.
Absolutely. And look, it doesn't sound crazy. McManus rejected it just like he did all the others. So he's writing from the perspective of what he thinks the Eagles would do, and he doesn't think they would go for it either. That's one of several interesting pieces up on ESPN.com right now, including one that takes a closer look at Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson and his complicated future in Indy. Our Colts reporter Stephen Holder writing, Richardson has one season remaining on his rookie contract, assuming the Colts decline to exercise his 2027 fifth-year option. May 1st is the deadline for that. Richardson is owed a $4.24 million roster bonus in August and is scheduled to count $10.82 million against the salary cap in 2026. Should the Colts trade him before June 1st, they would save $5.385 million against the salary cap. Assuming Richardson is fully healed from the facial injury, he figures to have some value. Each of the following quarterbacks were traded for draft pick compensation in the last two seasons: Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Malik Willis, and Taylor Heineke. So, yeah, look, this is still a young player, right, Tim, that might be of interest to teams that are looking to take a shot maybe on an upside play at quarterback. What do you think the Colts should be thinking here?
I think that, yeah, it's something to consider. Look, if you're going to get the compensation that, the Steelers got for Kenny Pickett, which I think was like 3rd round plus some other picks as well, look, maybe you do something like that. I'm just not positive. In fact, I know that the market will not be as strong for Richardson as it was for Pickett. Pickett had played, many more games and had produced better. The other thing that's complicating this is that Daniel Jones is coming off of a significant injury, and the other quarterbacks that have come off of similar injuries, albeit older guys, and Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, they haven't really been right away. So I think it probably makes a little bit more sense because you're probably not going to get a whole lot for Richardson, and your quarterback situation, at least for the first month of the season, could be in a tricky situation. So I would actually keep Richardson, see if you can get him to play well, and then at that point kind of figure out your next move with him going forward.
Yeah, Colts have been telling us since they drafted him, Anthony Richardson needs experience, needs to play. Obviously, a number of injuries have prevented that. We'll see if he can get it turned around. You mentioned Daniel Jones. He's one of a handful of notable quarterbacks that could be available for teams this offseason, along with Malik Willis and some of the top passers in the draft like Fernando Mendoza. There's a few guys that could be available if they move on from their current teams. These guys are under contract. Mac Jones in San Francisco, Kyler Murray in Arizona, Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. So we'll see how that shakes out with those guys get traded, released, whatever. But I want to talk to him about Malik Willis, who played obviously well in some very small samples with the Packers the last couple of years. What do you think the market looks like for a guy like that?
I think it's going to be strong for Willis, and strong just means you have more than one team interested in you, and I think that'll be the case. I mean, I think at a minimum, you look at teams like Miami and Arizona, I think that they will be in the market, for a quarterback that projects to be a starter. And so, when you look at, deals other guys have signed. Look, Daniel Jones is making like $14 million on a short-term deal. He wasn't brought into Indianapolis to for sure be the guy. He had to compete for it. Willis is going to walk in as the anointed starter somewhere because I think the market's going to dictate that. And so you're probably looking at potentially something similar, maybe even better, because you're going to have multiple suitors than what Sam Darnold signed in Seattle. Because, remember, for Darnold, it wasn't like there were a bunch of options for him to be a starter. So if you have more than one team that is interested in you as a starter, then you're going to get close to starter money, which I think for Willis will end up in the mid-30s, maybe even approaching $40 million a year.
Ooh. I think you're right, first of all. Just hearing that number, it is really stunning, right? When you think about how little football he's played. But I can see the appeal for a number of teams. Two of the teams I've been hearing a lot are Miami and Pittsburgh. Miami, there's the association with the coach and the GM coming from Green Bay. But I just don't think it makes sense for their timeline. This is a team that when they release Tua is going to have very, very little money. I think they'll be in the red. And there's so many needs on that roster. Edge, cornerback, receiver. Whereas Pittsburgh, I feel like the timeline and the player just match up. It's a team that was in the playoffs last year. A team that has drafted fairly well. A team that has some needs for sure. They need another receiver, another corner, whatnot. But I feel like the existing offense really pairs nicely with Willis. I'm of the belief that, similar to Jalen Hurts, you ideally want him with a strong run game that he's a part of that creates one-on-one opportunities outside for a receiver like DK Metcalf. It just makes sense. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I would really seriously take a look at him, even if, it's Mike McCarthy and there's the Aaron Rodgers connection.
Pittsburgh sure could use a long-term answer at the position. Willis would be their 5th different primary starting quarterback since 2023. When we come back on